Welcome to the Prisoner to Painter podcast, stories of inspiration, where we talk about mental health, addiction, religion, becoming a business owner and self-sufficient, for what, when, where, and why. Join us and we can be your local hope dealer.
Inspiration and dedication. I came a long way from sleeping in them cages. I got my life back, I feel amazing. Life's a book, don't get stuck on sad pages. Rainy days with no money. Hard work leads to days that are sunny. Looking back, it was all needed. The problems, the pain, the trauma, the grieving. You are now tuned in to the prisoner to painter. Prisoner to painter. Hard work, dedication. Rainy days, inspiration. Prisoner to painter.
And now, a word from your local hope dealer.
A month before that.
Oh, nice.
We got married after a month. And,
You know what? When it's right, it's right.
yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right.
Yep. Welcome to the Prisoner to Painter podcast. I'm Nathan McDermott.
And I am Katie McDermott.
And today joining us is Jenifer Scanlon.
Jenifer Scanlon.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. She's a well-known realtor in the Jackson area. Awesome. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. The brokerage house has been here we turned 45 this year. The brokerage house does. Yeah.
So that was one of my questions. And I know we'll get to it. Did you start that or
No.
Okay.
So Bob Simmons and Marianne Moeller, they are just real pillars in the Jackson community and development over the last 50 years, started the brokerage house 45 years ago. They welcomed me with open arms, being a late bloomer. I had a toddler and was pregnant and approaching 40, and the market was terrible. I don't know if I can swear, but it was really shitty and really scary. And long story short, we can get into that more later, but they welcomed me with open arms with a pretty cool, what do I want to say? God moment, really. But however, we flash forward 8 or 9 years and we lost Marianne. She was in her 90s and at work, just weeks before she passed. She was just this badass. And then, Bob decided to retire. So when Bob and Marianne started the business, they promised each other 20 years and they went well over like 35 years. And so he came to his daughter, Sandy, who ran the office, and to myself, who was at the time, I had established quite a career during the 8 or 9 years under his tutelage, and said, okay, I'm either going to close it or you girls are going to take it over and buy it. And we did it just in time for COVID.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that part of it. Well, clearly I didn't. That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Sorry, I just got at a loss. And it seems like you only sell high-end houses. So is that does the brokerage house specialize in the high-end houses?
So Bob Simmons told me a long time ago, and one of those conversations was when I was thinking about making that move and purchasing it with his daughter. I said, I just don't know. And he said, Jenifer, you can sell the trailer on the train tracks and you can sell the $1 Million Lake House. You're open to serving anybody. You will do well. And he was right. Yeah. And, you talk about bread and butter, right? And your bread and butter are the people that are going to come back to you. It's not transactional. It's about that relationship and the people that you're going to be a coveted resource for them for years to come. So I love those first-time home buyers, that are just figuring out how to make it work, all the way up to, we elevate our listings regardless of price point. And so, we go up into the multi-million-dollar lake properties. We love the historic homes and cool architecture here in Jackson, but no matter what it is, it's someone's home. It's probably the biggest financial decision that they're making. So it's not just financial, it's not just business, it's very emotional and very personal to them. So we're honored to do that at any stage in the game.
You're like selling the experience, the emotional.
It is. I always say if I had to do it all over again, I still would have ended up in real estate. I just would have taken a lot more psychology classes, because really what we do every day is just balance emotions, right? We help people through that, the mental block of, yes, you can do this. And what does this look like? It's, do you mind if I tell you a quick story?
No, of course.
We had a client that came into a windfall of cash for the first time and probably the only time ever in his life. And he said, you know what I want to do? I want to buy a house. Nobody in my family has ever owned their own home. I want to buy my own house. So we helped him do it. And when we were talking to him, we said, hey, here's what we have to do. You need to get homeowners insurance. You need to do this. You need to do that. He said, oh, no, I'm out. I can't afford it. I'm already paying $4,000 a year for my truck. And I'm like, for what?
Yeah.
And he said, for insurance. And I said, what are you talking about? $4,000 a year. Or sorry, it was a year. $4,000 a year for your truck. And he goes, well, you know, I go to this place down the road where you just go in and pay cash weekly. And he was being robbed.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, so what he found out is that we were able to get him in his home, cover his home, his car, and his significant other's car for less than what he was paying for the one, just by using local strong resources. And that was huge. So helping people realize, yes, I can. Yeah, you can. Marital counseling. We do a lot of marital counseling. Oh my gosh. Financial counseling, estate planning, you know, all the things that we kind of, you know, we just touch on it and help point them in the right direction. We're not accountants. We're not attorneys. We're not psychiatrists, but we are there to be a very valued companion and resource for people through a very emotional and important financial decision.
Well, and speaking on experience from being a first-time home buyer recently, it's scary.
It's so
very
scary,
So
yeah.
We relied on our realtor. I mean, relied on him a lot because I had no idea what I was doing. So you have to be trustworthy.
And you'll never forget him.
No, never will.
You know,
Never.
you'll always be so grateful for that.
Yeah.
And I just think, you know, you see realtors be made fun of a lot on television, and that's okay because it keeps us relevant, right?
Yeah.
It's funny. I've seen some of the funniest South Park things about realtors and Modern Family, and that's okay. I don't mind being the butt of a joke. I'm a blonde woman. I have to be used to being the butt of jokes. That's okay because it keeps us relevant. But the bottom line is, nobody understands the work and the heart that truly goes into what any successful realtor does for their client is serve. Because we don't sell anything. I don't make anything. You know, I don't have a tangible product. You tell me what you need and I go to work to serve that need. And that's what we do.
That's awesome. Thank you for describing.
See,
it
the
like that.
one thing that I knew when we started looking for a house is what I wanted.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want this, I want that.
Yes.
I don't want this.
That checklist is so funny. But, you know, ironically, something that was said to me early on, and I was so offended by it, and it was buyers are liars. And I'm like, oh, that's terrible. And it's not that buyers are liars. It's that we think we know what we want, right? And we make that list. And some people are excellent. They put in a lot of time and thought, and they do a great job with it. But you would not believe the number of people that tell me they want acreage that end up buying a condo. Or people that want a condo that end up buying acreage. It's sometimes you don't know what you want until you see it, but that's our job, is to help you discover all the different options out there. So buyers are liars. They just don't know it, and they don't mean anything ill by it.
No, it's funny you say that because I'm like, I want this, and this. This is nothing of what
This
I
is
want.
nothing.
But it's what I want
The
now.
one thing was like the pie window. We have like a pie window. So I'm like, I want like country homey cottage farm, you know?
Love it. Love it.
But for first time, it's good. To me, a first home buying is just a stepping stone anyway. Because after 5 years, I'm out of here. So it's a goal.
And that's what, I always tell people, give it 3 to 5 years. If you can do that, that home's going to serve you really well and doing what you want to do, doing what comes next.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, we went forward, but now we'll go backwards.
Yeah.
So the point of, I guess, of this show is I try to learn your story to inspire hope to everybody listening for any reason. A realtor, you know, a younger realtor, maybe that idolizes. I mean, because your name is big in Jackson. You know, so maybe people that are, can learn something from the real estate world, or maybe just a woman that's getting into a male feeler, just whatever. You know, you can inspire hope.
Hit me with it.
Awesome. So I started in childhood. So as a broad statement, how was your childhood, and what did mom and dad do for work?
You know, I've been blessed with a lot of love and a lot of laughter in my life. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. My mom was divorced a handful of times. And so it was kind of feast or famine a lot growing up. But we always had a lot of love, and we always had a lot of laughter. And my mom always reminded me it was really important to do the most, not the least. And that was really important as we got older. There were 4 of us. Quick, like 4 of us in 6 years. And then I hope he's not listening, but sometimes we affectionately call my brother the oops baby, who came when I was 17, but the oops ended up being such a huge blessing. But, my mom and I teased that we grew up together. She was 20 when I was born, and we really did a lot of maturing and growing together and raising our family together through a lot of ups and downs. But like I said, more love and laughter than, more than anything, more than any money or any other resources that we had, but a lot of love, a lot of laughter.
Awesome. Something you said just made me think, do the most, not the least or whatever. I, one time was asked to raise my hand. So I go like this, and then the guy says, well, raise it up. And it didn't click until that. Why didn't you do that the first time?
Yeah.
Now I do it the first time.
Every time. Yeah.
Well, also I think people don't realize parameters. They put parameters on themselves.
Yes.
So then they don't know the parameters of another person. So they're doing what they think is the parameter until it is specified.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely some truth to that. I think, when it's kind of all hands on deck when you've got a big family and circumstances changing from time to time. And so it's important to just kind of evaluate the situation, figure out what the safe parameters are, and just go to work and do the most, not the least.
Awesome.
Oh, they're supposed to be good luck. Maybe not anymore.
Maybe not.
Not for her.
That's funny. Who did you look up to the most in your childhood?
Oh gosh, I mean, my mom is just a pillar of strength. It's such a good time. She taught me a lot of good things and bad things. But I had two male teachers that still to this day just warm my heart when I think about them. And one was my 5th grade teacher. His name was Ron Berlinski, and he passed away recently. But he just saw something in me and believed in me. And it's funny, I now work closely with JTV and get to work on the morning show with Andy Hawley. And
cool.
it's so amazing. And when I was a little girl, that's what I wanted to do, was broadcasting. Wow. And Mr. Berlinski, first of all, there was a field trip to Toronto, and there was no way I was going to be able to afford to do it, but somehow I got to go. That's cool. And I know he had something to do with it. And while we were there, he asked my friend and I, in Brooklyn, there used to be a thing called, it was public television. What was the name of it? It was Channel something. Anyway, he asked us if we would do this video in Toronto, just kind of like talking about the sites. And I'll never forget, like Casa Loma and the Sears Tower, or CN Tower rather, and all these cool things. And then it aired on, like, my grandmother called because she got to see it on public television. And I remember thinking, God, I wonder if this is something, that could actually be a career. Mm-hmm. Was never anything that I, pursued or figured out how to pursue, but it has ended up becoming this incredible hobby of mine that allows me to do a lot of what you guys are doing, which is just spread good news to people, because we're so bombarded with all the negativity. Yeah. So anyway, not to go off on a tangent, which I will do. Yeah. But so Mr. Berlinski, and then again, I think, being divorced a couple of times, it was really nice to have some very positive male role models. Mm-hmm. And then Greg Meshke, who is still alive and well in the Irish Hills. He's kind of like the Fred Bear of education and this sports life and Ducks Unlimited. But he was my speech and forensics teacher. And you mentioned Phil talking to you about, public speaking courses and things. And I think about him every week before I go live. And honestly, before I do much, even with clients doing presentations, you still get the willies. I think about the tools that he shared with me. So that was huge. And then a little bit later in life, a man by the name of Stephen Cook. Again, these are people that just saw something in me, and they wanted nothing from me, but for me to do well. There's plenty of other men I could talk about that the story was different, but these ones in particular, just were so kind and gracious. And Stephen Cook gave me a job with a lot of responsibility and just kind of took me under his wing and made it impossible for me not to do better in life than the path that I was on when we met. And he gave me away at my wedding. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, there is some people that when they want nothing but to see you do good, you'll never forget them. Never forget them. That's Phil for me. I mean, he took us. I think a chance. It was a chance, but he put all his eggs in my basket, and I'm glad I didn't let him down.
Well, he's a smart man, and he only takes calculated risks. So he saw something in you that he knew he could bet on.
Yeah, and I'm glad he did. I am glad. How were your school years, and did you get in any trouble?
Oh God, yes. I mean, school was great. I mean, again, I had such great educators. I feel I went to Columbia or Miller Elementary out in Cement City, and then on to Columbia. I took a cup of coffee and went to Jenifer Horton for a couple of months when we had a move and then moved back type of thing. But I did well. I could just kind of figure it out. You know, I mean, I struggled with things like biology and like geometry, but you give me algebra, psychology, AP English, and chemistry, and I could knock it out of the park. But there might have been an incident stealing a car in 7th grade, and there might have been, you know, some just carousing, and you know, we had a pretty good time. We had a great core group of friends, but never any mistakes that I couldn't come back from or learn from. And the biggest thing is I just realized I can think of 3 times in my life, and I like to think that it was God just took his hands on my shoulders and forced me to look myself in the mirror and said, you got 2 choices, kid. And I'm telling you that the way you're going, you know, I gave you free will, but you're not doing the best with it. And so I'm grateful for the fact that even though we'd gotten a little bit of trouble, it was nothing that I couldn't come back from and learn from.
You know, and I asked some of these questions, honestly, well, clearly for a reason, of course.
Yeah.
But I asked because it seems like all these successful people, like bigger names, successful people, a little bit of trouble, not very great at school. I just think it's not a science project, but I think it's unique to think all these big names that had about the same school experience, maybe not great or whatever. And I think that's neat, I guess.
I read something once that said that the A students will work for the C students one day. You know, and that's pretty compelling.
Well, everybody has different learning styles.
True.
So like for me, I was like, I need to do it. I need visual, like I need like a mixture of everything. So I was better at like geometry and algebra because there was a formula. I could see where the numbers needed to go and what they were meant to do. So I just think everybody learns different. So you know, a standard learning experience, especially like even like when we were in school is vastly different than like now they do the STEAM and the STEM and all that.
Oh yeah, good luck with Common Core math.
Oh yeah.
Well, about that, we also did Pledge of Allegiance every day too.
Oh yeah.
So you said Columbia is where you went to school. Were you born and raised out in Brooklyn?
Pretty much, yeah, in the Irish Hills area. Yeah, and it's one of those places that I loved it. It seemed like no matter what kind of craziness was going on at home, there was always a lake nearby that was just kind of my serenity, not solemn, my serenity. So I was really grateful for the opportunity to grow up fishing and swimming and all of those things. And something that we were late bloomers, and something I said, if we were ever blessed with kids, I would want to raise them near water because it was such an important part of my childhood growing up and the best part of it. I didn't realize, though, until I was an adult, just what a magical place the Irish Hills is.
Oh, and it's beautiful out there.
Yeah.
It's peaceful. It's beautiful.
So you grew up out there. So I was young, but I was on the back end of it. Did you go to the dinosaur park thing?
Oh, yeah. Oh, prehistoric forest. And there used to be this like killer water slide, and all the cutest boys worked there in the summer. My cousins all worked. They grew up out in the Onstead area, and they all worked for Mystery Hill, Prehistoric Forest, Bear's Lair, you know, all those old Stagecoach Stop, all those roadside attractions that have kind of gone by the wayside because we have the attention span of a gnat anymore. But it definitely was a big part of my childhood. Mystery Hill is still open.
Oh, yeah.
I bought a Stagecoach and doing some horror.
It's like a horror museum or something.
Yeah. So it's cool. I mean, any time somebody wants to re-envision and breathe new life into something, I encourage it. So, but the Irish Hills, I mean, they're called that for a reason, right? When the immigrants came over, it very much so reminded them, you know, all the green rolling hills and the water and all of those things. There's something very, very magical about it. And coming back later in life to raise my family and have a second career has just been phenomenal. And my girls recognize it more than I ever did because they come in school to go to, they go to school in town, but we live out there, and they're like, Mom, we really have the best of both worlds. Thank you so much. Because we live in this sweet, quaint town. Yeah. I mean, downtown Brooklyn, we've got, you know, the boulevard, the stars and stripes flying all the time, music playing on the boulevard, and great mom and pop shops, and We've got Shady's, and if you haven't checked out Atlas down there, you got to check it out. It's like my favorite restaurant. The coffee shop, just so many cool things. So it's been cool to watch it. You know, when I was growing up, I think there was a blinking light.
Yeah.
And now we've got like a major light, 2 major lights. And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
There's more than one fast food out there.
Yeah.
There's a Taco Bell.
Yeah. You know you made it.
Yeah.
When you have Taco
We
Bell.
have arrived. So yeah, where McDonald's is, there used to be a place called Root Beer Depot, and it was kind of like Rudy's. You know?
Yeah, like a little drive-in.
Yeah. And the at least early on, the wait staff were on roller skates.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
you know, it's just
Cool.
super fun. So it's been cool to watch it evolve, but it's also been cool to watch it stay the same in some ways. Like the Village Peddler, my friend Christy Allred owns that now, and we went there as kids and got candy, and they had Jelly Bellies.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
you could buy the little bag of Jelly Bellies and put in whatever flavors you wanted. That was such a core memory for me growing up, and now my girls get to experience the same thing.
Yeah.
They even have the wax, you know, and you bite into the wax and it has like the
like,
cola
little
or the
juice.
juice. Yeah. So just the fact that they get to, you know, feel a piece of that nostalgia is pretty darn cool. So I feel blessed to come back home.
Yeah. Gosh, how does living there with MIF going on?
You know, it's crazy because when I was growing up, there were 3 races a year, June, July, and August. And I think July's race was usually IndyCar. So IndyCar hasn't been at MIS in years, although there's talk of them coming back. And now NASCAR owns the track. So long story short, we only have 1 race a year.
So it's not that busy. Then.
It's not. And the sad thing is, it was such a huge injection financially for our community. It was huge. People always bitched and moaned about the traffic. I never minded the traffic because with it came great people watching. It was just amazing. And now the state police got involved, and they actually it's a feat of engineering what they've turned the what do you call it, like the flow of traffic.
Yeah.
So you go all the way around town, and it really was not that burdensome. And we are on Lake Columbia, and you can hear the cars, and the noise kind of travels across the water, and that still gives me goosebumps all these years later. So, and I think with NASCAR owning it, one of the races, maybe it's the August race, will rotate, so we'll get it back every 5th year. So yeah.
So I try on the show, I try not to go into too much of my opinions or political, but I did want to ask, how is Fast for Horses out there? The reason I asked that because the crowd that it brings and the drink, how is that living there?
So sadly, they're not coming back this year. They're taking a pause. I think they're just regrouping. You know, there have been some horror stories out of there. Obviously, the young boys that we lost from Michigan Center still, I think, is very painful. And I think that the festival itself kind of was a trigger for those families. But with that said, people would scrape and save all year long to take their one and only vacation right here in the Irish Hills of Michigan. And they would come out to support these amazing artists that would travel to the middle of nowhere. I have a friend who's a yoga instructor, and she was hired to come and do they pool yoga for the artists. So they put up like a above ground pool, and she has this stand-up paddleboards, and her job was to be there for the artists to come and just kind of relax and do some stand-up paddleboard yoga. And some other local hairdressers, you know, their job was to go out and just do incredible braids and hairstyles for the women that were there. And I think, please don't quote me, but it was something like a $10 million injection into the local economy. So overall, it was awesome, you know, and that it was 30,000 people. I mean, with the races, we used to get 100,000 people. So it really wasn't that bad. There was one time we were at McDonald's, and my daughter was like, "Mommy, why is that man going to the bathroom outside?" But, you know, these kids would come completely unprepared, and they would buy us out of house and home, which was a good thing. You know, they bought everything. They left a heck of a mess behind. But again, that's commerce. You know, somebody got paid to clean it up. So I'm a proponent for it. We have that beautiful asset in MIS, and I'm all for it being better utilized.
Awesome. So before we jump back to the story, you're right. I get sidetracked easy too. But no, when I got my trouble, I was never a prisoner, but I was, you know, in jail, prisoner to alcohol. But when I was a prisoner, I was in trouble, and I had to pick up cans there after NASCAR.
Oh yeah.
The amount of money they pull in, I didn't get to have the money, but picking up the cans, I'm like, that is crazy.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Probably thousands. I know at least thousands, but maybe tens of thousands.
Oh, yeah.
I was just gonna say the cleanup is a good like rehabilitation community service.
It really is.
opportunity, too.
Well, it makes me not want to get in trouble picking up 100,000.
Yeah, right. Yeah, nothing like a little bit of time to think about, how and why you got somewhere, to really let it sink in, and then hopefully give you some time to think about how to restart.
Yeah, and definitely. Okay, so going back to school, did you do any sports or choir or clubs like chess club, anything of that nature?
So I was a cheerleader, and I do not have the bandwidth for chess. My younger daughter has learned, and I just did you guys watch the Queen's Gambit?
I did not.
It's amazing, but the whole time I was like, yeah, I'm an idiot because my brain just doesn't work that way. But I was a cheerleader. I was on student council, student leadership, peer listening. Those were things that definitely, again, they were things where Mr. Meshke a lot of the time was like, hey, you really should think about doing this or doing that. And cheerleading at the time, there was a big debate whether it was a sport or not, and the millage didn't pass, and we weren't going to be able to cheer, and we couldn't use the weight room. And what we did was, we had to fundraise, right? It taught me a lot about business and money. And so we did some really creative things to fundraise. We couldn't use a weight room, so we had to learn how to do resistance training just with ourselves. And then we made it our goal to beat the football players in running, so you think, oh, cheerleading. Well, it was a big deal to me at the time. And it really taught me a lot of core values that took me, I took with me into adulthood. And there's the competition side of it as well. But overall, the camaraderie and just trying to pivot as the world was very, very different in the early 90s than it is now.
See, I think it's just as important. Nowadays, you have, like women's football and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I think it was just important back then. I say back then, but it's like the football, you didn't have a women's football team.
Right.
And you guys needed, they need to do something.
Yeah.
So, that's cool. That's really cool. This is just a question that I ask because I think it's kind of fun, not fun, but would you say you were popular?
Yes.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And so my mom growing up, she always wanted us to do well in school, but she always said, if your citizenship grade is anything less than a 1, it was Roman numerals, 1, 2, 3. And number 1 was excellent. And if it was anything less than a 1, your ass was in trouble. She could deal with a C. She could not deal with poor citizenship. And I had an opportunity. There was another man, Mr. Downing at Miller Elementary, that gave us the opportunity to work with the kids at the time that were special. There used to be a special classroom for people with physical or cognitive needs, and it allowed me to work with Special Olympics and really give me a sense of empathy that I might not have had otherwise. And so with that, I don't think, I'm sure there were some people I got on their nerves that didn't care for me, but I had a pretty vast reach of people that I cared about and that had touched my life. And in turn, I wanted to be a positive force for them too. So I would say in high school, I was homecoming queen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I come from a time where my senior year, we didn't do that.
What? Why?
No king or queen.
That's right.
Oh, it was inclusiveness. And
I get it.
Just the fun out of it.
Well, and I wouldn't have even said that I was, except you asked that question. And I think popularity can seem like such an elitist thing, but to me, what it meant was that I had touched enough people's lives. I wasn't the prettiest. I wasn't the most athletic. I wasn't the funniest. But I was born and raised there, and I did get involved in a lot of different groups that did positive things in the school and the community. And I think that made a big difference and made my mom proud that my citizenship grade was strong.
Well, in charisma, I feel like it's one of the best traits to have.
Well,
and you're clearly charismatic.
You can't see it in high school. I switched. So I went to one school practically my whole life, and then I switched to another one, and then my senior year I switched to the last one.
Okay.
But I know so many people, and so many people are like, "Yeah, we went to school." And I'm like, "I don't remember you." I'm sorry, but I didn't talk to a lot of people. I was not popular. I kept to myself. But
that doesn't mean you weren't memorable and didn't make your impression on them.
Exactly.
Obviously, you did.
Yep.
So that's why I was like, it's all in the eye of the person, you know? And then you don't realize till you're older,
Yeah. When you're going through those moments, I never felt popular. It's only in retrospect that I guess you could categorize it that way. But Yeah. I mean, if I could trade 2 years of my life, it would have been middle school. I mean, that was torture.
Absolutely.
Torture.
Right?
100% agree.
I mean, you look terrible, you feel terrible. Everybody's just realizing that, I mean, they're just a-holes for like 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So if you're asking me if I was popular in middle school, the answer would have been no. But you start to come into your own in adulthood and you have a sense of independence. It can really kind of, I don't know, you build a little bit more of a backbone. In middle school, you're really concerned about what everybody thinks.
Yeah.
And in high school, I feel like something that sets you apart is if you're just like, okay, this is me.
Well, and like I said, I really think it matters. And not for anything, but I mean, like being popular, I've noticed a lot of richer, successful people got along with most people.
Yeah.
So not popular in terms of like you were the quarterback, popular
Yeah.
in terms of like you got along with people.
Yeah.
So awesome. Do you think high school got you ready for real life or whatever the next step was?
Well, for me, I'm going to say yes, because being the oldest of 5, without a lot of financial resources behind us, going to college right after high school was not really an option for me. In hindsight, it was, and I should have investigated it further. We probably would have qualified for a lot of financial aid, but it was really important that I got my butt to work. And so, I worked 2 or 3 jobs for years to make ends meet, to help my mom, and do those kind of things. So I mean, when I talk about Mr. Meschke and Mr. Berlinski, I'm 50 years old and I still pull from things that they shared with me way back then. So I do feel like they gave me a great core. If I had gone to college right after high school, who knows where I would be right now, but my path was just a little bit different and I'm grateful for it.
Well, 2 or 3 jobs right out of high school to me is phenomenal. I want riches. I want success. And I hear this because I do too, but I hear this a lot from people and it's like, I want what they have. You don't see what happened prior to.
No.
So, Jenifer, the realtor, sells these beautiful houses. Well, they don't see the 2 or 3 jobs that you have for 10 years and then you finally caught a break or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. Her friend Ashley, same thing. Got out of school, 2 or 3 jobs. I mean, 4 hours.
She worked. There was times she like slept 2-3 hours a night and then would work.
Oh, God bless her. Well, to me, doing the most, not the least, right? You can define that in different ways. And to me, it almost became, at that point, I don't want to say survival, like I was never afraid for my life, but I needed to help make sure that the lights stayed on and needed to make sure that I could afford gas in my car and all those things. It's funny, I hoard paper products now, like toilet paper and paper towel, because I don't know if it was more a symptom of being the oldest of 5 or that we were broke some of the time, but you'd run out of toilet paper, then you'd panic and you'd go to the paper towel, and then you'd run out of paper towel and you'd panic, you go out to the car and get the napkins from Hot Now that were left because it was super cheap to get Hot Now burgers, and then you're out of that, and then you panic and you take the cans back to buy the toilet paper, so to me, my success was when I had a plethora of toilet paper and paper towel. I felt like, okay, I've arrived.
Mine's bread.
Oh.
He's like, we have so much bread. Do not get me more bread.
There's 2 in the freezer, 3 on the.
It just feels good though. It just feels good.
If you don't have anything to eat, you can make an egg sandwich.
Yeah.
A peanut sandwich.
A loaf of bread is very versatile, right? I mean, it's like Jesus and the loaves. You got it. But we'll make it work.
Right.
It's funny. Doing these shows, I always overlap with people. We met at Hot Now the last
one. Oh, you're kidding!
Yep.
The last one in Sturgis is where we met.
Oh, it's still there,
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I think it's the last one in Michigan.
Yep.
Oh, that's amazing.
I think it's one of the last ones in general.
Were you guys just hanging out there? Was somebody working there?
So I made a trip with my friends to go up there.
Okay.
And, her cousin was tagging along.
All right.
And,
he was like, I don't want to ride by myself because the car's full.
So she just tagged along, and then so we didn't meet on the ride up, but we got there, and then I hopped in his car and I met her.
And mind you, I didn't leave my house for this was mid-COVID.
I
leave my house for 2 years before that.
Oh my gosh.
So
I feel like Hot Now needs you guys to be like the spokespeople. Like, look what we made. Not just a 50-cent burger. We made love.
We made marriage out of it.
Yeah.
we did get a cool bumper sticker, but sadly it was on my little crappy Honda Civic.
Oh
that
no.
died on me, but I wish I would have saved it.
Oh, what did the bumper sticker say?
I want it hot and now.
Oh my God, that is hilarious. Were those your wedding vows?
Is there before we go on to the next? I think second, but just like parts of life. Is there any story you would like to share? Is there anything I missed in like school and childhood?
Oh my God, there's just a million stories. But it really is true as I think about different segments of childhood. What do they say? You're the average of the 5 people that you're closest to. Mm-hmm. And once I got into high school, I have this core group of friends. There were a bunch of us, but there are 3 of us that are still incredibly close. We're the godmothers to each other's children. We're the first or second call when there's something good or bad that happens in life. And I cannot say that enough, because I think about other people that interjected themselves into my life or that I allowed into my life that were very negative impact, right? They were one of those people the Lord had to shake me and be like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? This is not going to get you good citizenship. And so, there's a million stories within them, but I think the biggest thing is, a big part of my heart has these 3 women that we've been friends since childhood and in adolescence, that we truly grew up and grew. Now we're growing old together, actually. And it's pretty incredible. So surround yourself with good people and good things will happen.
Well, my new boss, Rich Harrison, the CEO, I bugged him and saying that I did with Phil, but I give the same spiel. I want to sit at the table with you. I hear if you sit at a table with 5 millionaires, you'll be the 6th. If you sit at the table with 5 bums, you'll be the 6th. I want to be the next millionaire, not the next bum. Yeah. So so I wrote out some questions. This is what I love about this. So you actually didn't go to college. No. That sounded bad. I say that because how educated you talk and how big your name, I just assumed. So what was after high school?
So actually, I'm glad that you said that. There were 2 things that come to mind. One, I had an aunt who, again, saw something in me and believed in something in me. And she sent me to this school in Toledo my senior year. I had to go every Thursday night. And it was like a finishing school. And it taught, like about posture and how to walk into a room and how, cool. And I was always an English, like I love to write. I still love to write. It's one of my favorite things about being a realtor is writing the narratives for my listings. But when I got older and my friends did all go to college and I saw them start to change, like even their speech changed, their vocabulary changed. And I was like, my God, they are not passing me up. So I would read the dictionary. Wow. And thesauruses. I know it sounds so silly. I mean, sounds like such a dorky thing to do, but I did it. And the thesaurus is still my favorite tool. And now we have the AI and I can just say, hey, give me 10 words for, that match or equal the word luxury. And it's amazing the things that they come up with, but it's still a tool. We're just using it in a different way. So I feel like those things coupled with, I did everything from roof houses to LaSalle to working at Subway I used my fake ID to get a job bartending because I could make a lot more money bartending. And I did it thinking, I'll work here for 3 months and help my mom and be out of here. And I worked there for 2 years. So I was lying about my age for 2 years to these people that, you become in a relationship with them. I even dated a guy that was all on the premise of me being a certain age. And then it's just a mess. Oh, what wicked webs we weave, right? But anyway, all of that versatility, I think, came together really well. And I did go back to school when I was 30. And I went to Jackson College and I 4-pointed, which I can guarantee you in 1993, nobody thought I was going to 4-point anything. And through another set of circumstances as life changed, I did not complete my degree. It's still something to this day. I don't want to say that I lament it. I had set it at a goal when I was 30, but I'm just a late bloomer. I didn't become a mother until I was 35 and I had my last one at 37 and found this amazing career in real estate and the sky was the limit. So we just took the ball and ran with it.
2 things I want to say. How much I idolize all these successful people. Eminem reads the dictionary, so I would never laugh at you because clearly there's something to it. Yeah. There's clearly something to it. And then I flipped on the second one. Oh no. So I wanted to say that double say I have a bad habit. I'm I'm trying to not judge books by their cover.
Sure.
And that means good or bad. So
Yeah.
like I see you successful. My mind always goes to college. I'm like, same with Phil. And Phil said, I didn't go to college, but my mind always jumps right to, because I guess as a kid, it's distilled to go to college.
Yeah.
That's what makes you successful.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm starting to realize a lot of people haven't gone to college, and they're probably the most successful people I know.
Yeah, I just think, again, if you go back to, I hate to keep repeating myself, but do the most and not the least. And whatever it is that you're doing, if you're doing the most, you'll accomplish the most. And I am not here to advocate. You better believe my daughters better go to college. You know, I want them to, I don't want them to have the same path. I want them to have different opportunities, but it is not the only way. And I don't know that I would have been a great candidate for it because I don't have that mind, but you know, so many people that go into the trades, they actually have a very technical and or engineering mind. And maybe they just don't have whatever opportunity to go to school right away. Or maybe the idea of being $500,000 in debt is very scary to them. And, but I think that they can take that same train of thought, something that just comes naturally to them, and parlay it into a fantastic career in the trades. So I'm excited to see more of an emphasis on that. Nowadays, it's so funny. I remember thinking, if somebody made $100,000 a year, they must be the richest people on the planet, right? Like, how could they ever want for anything? And the world is so much different now. You can very well make 6 figures in the trade and do extremely well. It is obtainable if you do the most, not the least. You know, if you do the least. When I got into real estate, somebody said to me, well, you know, the average realtor in Jackson makes $25,000 a year. Now, this was 14 years ago, and the market was shit. Foreclosures, bankruptcies, short sales, death, divorce. It was pretty bleak. And when she said that to me, she said, I hope you don't want to make, you know, hope you're not trying to earn more than 25 grand a year. And I said, are you kidding me? I mean, I could do anything and make $25,000 a year. I can go back and work fast food and make $25,000 a year and not even have to work full time. No, I'm not going to take this time away from my family for $25,000. And she wasn't saying it to disparage me. She was saying it to set a reasonable expectation, but it was just not one that I was willing to even hear, see, or feel. And I was like, I'm doing this to build an empire. And she laughed, but now we laugh about it jokingly over a drink every once in a while. But you know, that's what we're doing.
Phil, and I bring him up a lot, but my story has a lot to do with it. But I did the most, and I'm in the trades, and I make 6 figures. So it is obtainable. It is obtainable. Have you heard of Grant Cardone? I'm sure you have. His 10X thing is it's just what you're saying. It's different, but if you give 10 times more effort than everybody else, odds are you're going to succeed in it. So that's what I try to do as well. I just try to do more than what everybody else does.
You know, I mentioned that when I got licensed, the world was pretty bleak. And one of the things that I noticed was all of these foreclosures, and you know, like raccoons would get in the house and defecate on the floor, and people would be everybody felt victimized, right? It wasn't that they got in over their heads; it's that the bank, the bank robbed them. So they'd punch holes in the wall and turn the water on and walk out. You know, leave it unlocked. Somebody come and like take out the water heater. I mean, the things that we saw were so terrible. And so I said, you know, this is not okay. I mean, I'm serious. It was like traumatic to show a lot of these properties. And so I said, what if I went to some of the local banks that had some foreclosures and said, what if I invest my time, effort, and money in at least getting the home habitable? And you can pay me back at closing. I'm not going to charge you any interest, but I believe I can sell it for more, and I get paid a percentage. And so let's see and then I'm going to stage it so that people can actually see themselves living in it. And staging and decorating are 2 completely different things. And it worked. And we were getting like 20% more than the beat up distressed home down the road. And we slowly but surely, I feel like, got to be a really important part of real estate healing in the Jackson and surrounding areas. But it goes back to that whole thing, do the most, not the least. And you mentioned that you feel like I have a reputation for selling higher end homes. And I do have the privilege of doing that, but we put that same elevated effort into every single home that we list. Last week we did 2 homes under 150,000, had them professionally cleaned, staged them, and then we had 2 lake properties that were preparing for the market. And each one gets the same amount of attention in elevating it because A, not everybody is going to do that, and B, trust me, that sale for the person that has the $120,000 home closer to town is actually more important to them and their livelihood and what they want to do next than that $700,000 lake house.
Yeah.
So our efforts need to be the most, not the least, regardless of what the situation is.
And sometimes, and this is me, I guess apologizing kind of, but sometimes my wording is, I said that so the audience knows that you do sell high-end homes.
Yeah.
But I know you take care of, like you had a conversation with me on the phone trying to get me in the right, like you are very helpful no matter what. You don't know me and you still answered the phone and initially, and then I couldn't buy a house at that point in time when we first met.
Well, what made me think about that was like Grant.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a little much for me, but he's kind of impossible to not pay attention to. But it's so funny because you think of him and you think massive money, success, wealth, indulgence. And I bet you that's not even the majority of his reality. Not that he doesn't have it, but I bet his reality is a little bit more modest and toned down than what that needs to be. But it's good because you want to know that, hey, they know what they're doing, regardless of who's watching. And so I never mind when people associate us with lake properties or elevated listings at all. I never mind.
Katie pointed something out, which I'm not even trying to compare the two here, but back in the day when everybody drank the Kool-Aid and passed or whatever. Well, no, I'm saying this for a reason. It wasn't Kool-Aid, it was Powerade.
It was
Flavor-Aid.
He's talking about the Jim Jones.
Yeah.
Flavor-Aid.
But any publicity, so Kool-Aid never corrected it because any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's true.
To just being related with it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I get it. Well, I didn't want to compare it to that, but
Thank you for comparing me to Jim Jones and Massacre.
I think it was more Kool-Aid than Jim Jones.
I'll take that. I would be the Kool-Aid guy every day.
Oh geez, yeah, put in the mouth here. Were you working these jobs right after high school? Did you ever get married? Okay.
So you guys met. Mentioned you had kind of a quick mad love thing, and it's so funny because I do help so many young people. They're like, "Oh, we've been together 3 years, and we're thinking about getting married." I'm like, "What are you waiting for?"
Yeah.
If you're still thinking about it, it's probably not the right. Probably not the right gig.
Yeah.
So although I knew my husband is 12 years older than I am. I was a teenager when I first met him. That sounded terrible, but he had no interest in me. But his name is Kerwin, and he was friends with my cousin who I idolized, who worked at Mystery Hill and Prehistoric Forest when he was younger. Anyway, long story short, he brought him home for Christmas, and that was a big tradition in our family. Christmas Eve was just always this big, huge bash. It was an open house. Anybody that didn't have somewhere to go, come and be with our family. And we're the loud family and obnoxious and all the things. We'd overeat, overindulge, all the things. But lots of love and lots of laughter, which was a common theme. But anyway, the first time I had big, huge, rusty blonde hair and more pimples than sense. And he paid me no mind. But I remember thinking, I don't know what a Kerwin is, but I like it. And so I would see him every couple of years, and flash forward 10 years later, he and I were in that same cousin's wedding, and we were both deathly ill, and he walked me to my hotel. We had a ball, and my uncle, Ron, who has since passed, but he told me that night, I want you to marry someone like Kerwin. And Kerwin walked me to my room that night and kissed me on my forehead, and it was lightning bolts. And I left there and thought, I'm going to marry him. And 3 months later, we were engaged. And 6 months after that, we were married. And we just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So, and it's hard. I mean, there's times I think about snuffing him out with a pillow. Hopefully this interview never comes back to haunt me, but I'm sure he feels the same way. I think anytime I'm bitching about him, I'm like, he is probably somewhere telling someone my wife has lost her freaking mind, but he has been such a huge cheerleader for me. And this is really interesting. Kerwin was 36 when we got married, had never been married, had no children. And he had criteria. Okay. She had to be Catholic. She could not be from a broken home. She had to have a college education. And there was a fourth thing. I can't remember what it was right now. But I mean, my home had been broken over and over again. Lots of love, lots of laughter, lots of broken glass. I was not a college graduate. I was still working 2 or 3 jobs at that time. And although I had a deep love and respect for the Lord, I was not Catholic. And he proposed to me 90 days later. So we always tease that he just wasn't looking for the right thing. Yeah. Then I also tease I was a child bride, and he's kind of molded me into what he wanted, because he became this like stable, steady force in my family, and did encourage me to go back and start taking classes, and did really instill this, although he never forced it on me, but really supported and sponsored my way through finding a faith home. And so, yeah, I've been really lucky in that. There are plenty of toads that I kissed before finding my prince, but we don't need to go into that.
No, that's perfect. I don't know the guy, but I already like him. So, so it says, it's funny because sometimes I read my notes, I'm like, oh, that was a note, not a question. But ask about husband and kids briefly. So that was a note, not a question. So, so you met him, you've been married 25 years. What is the key to staying married for that long?
Oh, patience and grace for yourself and for them. We were married 10 years before we had kids. We were told over and over it was never going to happen. And he's one of 9, I'm one of 5. I would tell anybody that has been told that, just don't lose hope one way or the other.
No, we've been trying since we got married. So
really? Yeah. Well, offline, we can talk about a couple of things. You know, we never went really crazy in our search other than trying to figure out why and then what we were going to do with it. And then we decided we were going to adopt. And my husband, our age difference played a huge role in why they wouldn't really look at us as great candidates. And we didn't have the money to spend, $50,000 to not kidnap, to buy a baby. And we both were taking care of our moms and our siblings, whatever they needed, whenever they needed it. And we had gone on vacation to an island called St. Kitts, and it was amazing. And while we were there, we said, you know what? Forget it. Maybe our lot in life is to be that cool aunt and uncle, and that's okay, and take care of our moms. And what if we start planning for an earlier retirement? And what if we thought about buying a house down here? So we leave St. Kitts, and we even mentioned it to our financial planner, like this is a goal that we want. And about 6 weeks later, we were pregnant with our first sustainable pregnancy in 10 years. And my daughter, Katie, was born on Christmas Day. So she came, we always tease that she came a month early, but 10 years late.
Oh, gift.
Oh my God. And she is, man, I have 2. And hopefully they won't ever see this, because one is a sinner and one is a saint. And my saint was born on the day we celebrate the Lord's birth. And she is one with Christ, just inherently, just this beautiful empathetic soul, the kind that you worry, like, will she be dropping? It's usually me dropping stuff. It's a kind of like, I never worry about her losing her way, but will she, I don't want her to be anybody's doormat either, because she just wants to make everybody happy. And then I tease and call Claire a sinner, because she was a wild ass in my stomach. She is a wild ass out in the world. And whereas Katie will give me affirmations every day, like, hey, Mom, thank you so much for making me that peanut butter and jelly and sending me that note too. It was fantastic. And Claire's like, how many times do I have to tell you? I freaking hate peanut butter and jelly. What is your deal? No. But she makes me laugh so hard and think. She makes me think really hard. And so it's funny. You get what you need when you need it, not necessarily when you want it. And now we're the old parents, right? Because I was 35, Kerwin was 47 when we had our first. He's now in his 60s. I'm in my 50s. It's nuts. But I wouldn't have it any other way. It allowed us to get to where we wanted to be, and it's a lot. When we had a long time to plan on what it would look like, and when we found out we were pregnant with Katie, I put in a plan to leave my career and stay home and be Mary frickin' Poppins, right? And for a lot of different reasons, pretty quickly we learned that, or I discovered within me, something else was going to have to happen. And we found out we were pregnant with our little sinner. So after 10 years of no babies, we have 2 in 2 years. And my uncle, who told me to marry Kerwin, my aunt and uncle said, you should consider real estate. Awesome. And I thought, I can't do that. And then I thought, can I? And so I took the class with Claire in my stomach, and Katie, I was still nursing her at the time. And it was just it was unbelievable, but it's exactly where I was supposed to be. It wasn't my timing. It was God's timing.
Perfect. You led it right into the next question about how you got into real estate. But before we go there, I always relate, not compare, because it's a podcast, so the discussion, but my mom also had me late in life. So my mom is 70 and I'm 28. So my mom had me late. I'm an IVF baby.
Wow.
But I'm also the last boy in my family. So very King James of me.
Yes.
King James,
Yeah.
he needs a boy.
Yes, you need a sire.
Yeah,
or you need to sire a boy. Yeah.
So my cousin Kendrick Bahau, he's a blood cousin, but different last name.
Okay.
And then my cousin John Henry married a lady with 3 kids and her stuff tied. So
Okay. Oh wow.
Odds are probably. So I'm the last McDermott to have a boy. So
How old are you guys?
I will be 30 in July.
Oh, you got plenty of time.
Oh yeah. No.
You got plenty of time.
But like I said, always relating. I never want you to feel like I'm comparing.
No, not at all. The biggest thing I can tell you though, kind of like in our instance, kind of give it up.
We have, but we also haven't. We do. We're in the process. We just started the process of like going to a clinic.
Okay.
So
seeing what's wrong, because I drank a lot and drug usage, so there's some issues there, and then she just had born with issues, so 2 issues.
Do you have endometriosis?
I have a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
They said though, miracle. Thank the Lord. When I went in last October, they said visually, there's no reason why I can't.
Okay.
Which they have told me forever in the past that it was going to be very hard.
Wow. Well, do you eat meat?
I do.
Eat a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Just eat a cheeseburger, chill out. I mean, my sister who quote unquote struggled with fertility, and she's like a Nazi. She only drinks water and she only eats whole and she works out. And if she sets a goal, she's going to accomplish it. And she could not make a baby. And I said, not you, but I said, drink a beer and eat a cheeseburger. And we always tease, but she did get pregnant. So.
Well, we cut out fast food. Which has helped our mood.
Yeah, well, that is good. But I guess just just give it that splurge. Sometimes, you can do all the right things. The other thing that I will say, there were 2 things that we were doing at the time leading up to deciding not to do anything anymore. But one of them was taking fish oil, a really good omega. Mm-hmm. And one, I felt a million times better, as did my husband. We still take it to this day. But I full-heartedly kind of goes back to Jesus, like the fish and the, he was a fisherman, and I don't know, it sounds really silly and symbolic, but it definitely was something that I contribute, very anti-inflammatory, very health driven. That was the big thing. The other thing that I had done, and I'd only done 3 rounds of it, but it was acupuncture.
Okay.
And there's a great place in the Irish Hills, Bart, out at Irish Hills Wellness and Acupuncture does it. At the time I worked in Ann Arbor and I went somewhere there, and I'd only done a few sessions, did not hurt.
No, I've always wanted to try it. I love holistic healing. I've done Reiki. I've done
then you're going to be way ahead of like the acceptance of it and the comfort of it than I was. Do it. Because those were, I like to tell the story like, oh, it was all in God's timing. But my husband likes to remind me that we had we kind of changed things up. We kind of left the medical portion of it behind. Like, okay, we're not going to do, if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. Mm-hmm. But here are some things that we can do that will make us better. And in turn, if it makes us parents, great. It's, I would suggest those 2 things to anybody that is struggling on that path before you get too cray.
Awesome. So perfect. Over. When did you get into real estate, and why did you get into it?
So I realized. So I mentioned early on that if we were ever blessed with kids, I wanted to raise them on the water. Mm-hmm. So you better believe. I mean, I went to the emergency room in heels. You'll never. If you see me not in heels, something's wrong. But in the emergency room in heels. At the time we had like BlackBerry phones that they weren't the smartphones like we have now on Zillow, you're buying me this lake house. And my husband made good on that promise and he did it. And so we doubled our mortgage, we doubled our insurance, we doubled the amount of house work. We had a mouth to feed to think about how we were going to care for her and we felt very strongly we wanted her to have a faith-based education.
Cool.
And then we found out we're pregnant with Claire. And I was not working for the first time since I was 11. And it was like, holy shit. I've got to do something to contribute to my family's bottom line. And we had to sell a house in order to buy our house. And there was something very innate in me that was like, okay, we need to stage this house. And I rented a storage unit, and nobody was doing this at the time. And I moved half the furniture out of our house and, decluttered, depersonalized. And in a time when the market was total crap, we sold our house very, very quickly for a very strong number. And I was like, I might be onto something. And then when we bought our house, we had one agent that was fantastic and one agent that was total shit. And I remember sitting there at the table, and the person that we were buying the house from, he was suffering from congenital heart failure. And there was my husband reads everything. I'll sign anything. You want to be in my will? Just hand me the favor. But my husband reads everything, and he noticed that in this one spot, our interest rate was wrong. Not a huge deal. It was a typo. It was only off by a little bit, but we needed to get it corrected. And fortunately, the title company and the lender were right next door to each other. It was nothing but a matter of minutes. But during that time, his name was Rudy. He kind of turned white, and he was kind of holding his chest, and you could tell he was really nervous. And his agent was over in the corner on her BlackBerry, never even looked up. And my agent and I kind of like elbowed each other, and she reached over and said, "Hey, Rudy, honey, this is happening today. You understand this is a paperwork thing. Like, we'll have it taken care of in a minute. Can I get you a glass of water?" He said, "Yeah, that'd be great." And the color started to come back to his face. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, I know I can do better than that. And I know this is like my agent is who I would gravitate to.
Aspire for.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so, and then, but I wasn't sure, right? It was just like planting a seed. And then flash forward months and months later, when I was having the conversation with my aunt and uncle, they said, and my uncle had actually considered it when he retired, and he had the Holloway book. My aunt went and got it, and it was a binder. I mean, it seems so antiquated now, like you wouldn't even have these, but this big binder, you open it up and there's all these pages. And I called Holloway the very next Monday and signed up for the class and went through the course. Well, like I said, I was pregnant with Claire. I guess I wasn't nursing anymore, because when you get pregnant, your milk dries up, but they had a baby, a toddler, and was expecting. And when I passed the test, I called every firm in Jackson, and only one firm called me back, and it was Bob Simmons. And my neighbor, Ann O'Neill, who's also a huge mentor of mine that I found later in life, she's the one that introduced me to them, said to call him. So I called him, he called me back. We met, and I said, "Hey, Bob, I have no idea what this is going to look like. This wasn't my goal at this stage in life, but here I am. But I'm a hard worker. I promise you, I'm not a bored housewife. I don't need a hobby. I need to contribute to my family's bottom line. I just don't know what this is going to look like." And you guys, he looked at me and said, "Well, we have all these empty offices. There's an area for kids. We'll put a nursing chair in there, and your kids can come in with you." And he said, "And my daughter runs the office. She's a licensed realtor, so she can help you with her business, but she also loves kids. So if you need to bring them in, bring them in." So my girls literally grew up in the brokerage house. That's awesome. At the corner of South Jackson and Mason. Right there, just outside of downtown. It is downtown. And Sandy Simmons, my business partner, is also kind of my partner in helping raise the girls, along with my great husband. But it was a miracle. And I just told him right up front, like, I want to do something incredible. And he gave me all the tools I needed and a blank enough slate, because the brokerage house at that point, again, real estate was terrible. And the world was just a different place. And they had not quite taken the next step into any type of innovation. And so, like, they didn't have a Facebook page, and they didn't, their website was very stagnant. And, but he did not tell me no. He gave me guidance. Like, I would say, "Oh, I want to do this." And he'd be like, "Well, how about if we do that?" He gave me really great guidance, but he gave me just enough rope. It could have been to hang myself or to really take off and run. And it gave me the ability to take off and run.
So I will ask this question again after I ask more questions, but I want to ask right now in this point. Did you ever, like, when you first started, did you see yourself being where you are now?
I did.
That's awesome. That's cool.
I did.
I hear that from a lot of successful people. If you can't see it, then
you have to be able to visualize.
Yeah, you have to be able to see it.
you'll hear me talk a lot about the word empire, and I feel like that's relative, right? To me, what it meant was that I was going to be able to contribute to my community and to my family's needs. And to me, if I could do those two things, then I had built an empire. And that was my goal from the get-go. It was to be the most of what I could be in this field. And I'm not done yet, but I'm really happy with where we are now. We bought it. We had we moved the office. We had our grand opening on March 12th of 2020. Awesome. March 13th, the whole world collapsed. Everything was closed.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And for 7 weeks, we were not. So it's funny, inspectors and bankers and appraisers could all work. They were considered essential right out of the gate. Yep. But then they didn't have anything to do, because the realtors weren't doing what we do, which is buy and sell homes. And so it took about 7 weeks for the, powers that be to have this infinite power and wisdom to say, okay, now you can leave your house and sell real estate. Yeah. But in that 7 weeks, I took every class that I could take online, every course that I could take, and just really was like, we did Zoom meetings every week with our team. And when we took over the brokerage house, I think we had 6 agents, and now we have 19. Awesome. And we don't recruit. Those are just people that are, attracted to us for what we do. And it's been pretty amazing.
That is amazing. Sorry, I smile because like certain parts of stories that's inspiring, and you see it full circle from where we said that. How was your first couple of years? Like in terms, well, I guess you probably know what I'm asking. How was your first couple of years as a real estate agent?
Well, I was blessed because I should have mentioned too, the other thing that was happening at the time was my husband's job became in grave peril for the first time in our marriage. Like his industry was changing. So it was out of necessity that I decided I needed to do something. So the first couple of years, if you're thinking about getting into it, make sure that you've got backup somehow for the first 12 to 24 months. Make sure that your mortgage and your car payment can be made, whether that's a significant other or savings or a side gig. Although I will warn, I never recommend part-time real estate. It's like anything, you want to do it part-time, then you'll be part-time good at it. Yeah. You want to be amazing at it, then you better be giving it your all. Real estate is a very lucrative career, but a very expensive hobby. So if you're in it, you're in it. My first 2 years were me literally usually coming with my babies in tow, and bringing people into as our family. There's always that a-hole that will never know you have kids, and you can just feel that right up front, right? They don't want to know you personally. It's transactional for them, and that's okay. I can be that too. But my girls have been in weddings of my clients. I've been the godparent and sponsors for some of my clients and their kids. It's been an unbelievable privilege that took off pretty fast because, again, we saw a need in doing something that nobody else was doing. And I'm not going to just accept that the market sucks and that there's nothing we can do. The reason why there were so many empty offices at the brokerage house when I came on is because that year over 200 realtors left the industry in Jackson County alone, which tells you, A, there were too many realtors, but B, too many that weren't working hard, because that's when I built the foundation for my empire. Was during that time. So I wouldn't have been able to do it without Sandy Simmons and her dad, Bob Simmons, and my husband, Kerwin, and my family's such great supporters and helping with that, your sphere of influence, and having confidence in me early on was huge.
Saying you brought your daughters, I clearly because you had to or whatever, because you're the mom. Do you ever think that benefited you? Like some people was more enticed that you had your kids with you? Yeah,
I think it's 50-50. I think some people find that really endearing, and they appreciate that you're willing to do whatever it takes.
Anything,
So yes, but again, you can one of the things I think in whatever industry you're going to be in, you better be good at reading your audience. Yeah. And so I would know right up front. I would tell people, I will be at your beck and call. Just sometimes I'm going to have a toddler in tow. I remember a funny story very early on. Claire was a baby. Katie was still in diapers. And I had a client who was a pilot in California, and he wanted to see this abandoned mansion in Grosse Ile. And Grosse Ile is almost 2 hours from here with traffic, and on the east side of Detroit. And I was like, all right, what else do I have to do today? And this was very, very early on. So I drive all the way out there, and, to kids in the car, 2 hours, there's some pooping going on, some peeing going on. Everybody's hungry and whiny. So I get in, and sure enough, this is one of those mansions that have like black and white checkered floors. And there's this huge red velvet couch, and both the kids start screaming at the same time, and they reek. And I was like, okay, this is happening. So I take them inside, and I put them on this red velvet couch, and I change both of their diapers. And I get Katie kind of set up next to me and decide I'm just gonna have to nurse Claire. This is happening. So I settle in, and it's dusty, you know, like any abandoned, and kind of scary, but kind of cool. And he's waiting for me to call him. And at the time, it wasn't FaceTime, but there was a video call. I forget what it was called.
Skype,
yeah,
something
Skype.
Like that.
Skype. You could Skype. And so I was like, well, I got to get my kids happy and sleeping so they're not crying in the background, and I'll just avoid the shot with the kids in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there nursing my infant and kind of petting my toddler, and I look up, and there's a freaking camera staring at me. And I was like, I mean, I'm going to be on the news. Not in a good way. Like, I don't know that it was casted anywhere. But I remember thinking, what am I doing? This is insane. But there are 50 stories where that came from. And so when you talk about the beginning, it was not all glamour, glamour, glamour. It was a lot of hard work. I have picked up more dead animals and feces than I can ever imagine. I've had frozen squirrels fall on me. I've had my phone fall into a cistern that I had to makeshift a ladder to climb over to get in. It's just a mess. But if you're willing to put in that hard work and whatever problem arises, you just figure out a way to overcome it. You can do great no matter what industry you're in.
Awesome. Did you sell many houses?
Right off the bat?
Yeah, right off the bat.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think I got licensed in the summer, and by the end of, let me think about this. I want to say that first year, I probably, in the first 6 months, I sold 5 homes, and that was a lot. Like, that's what you could probably hope to do in a full year's time.
Okay.
By the end of my second full year, I knew that I was going to be at an income threshold that I never thought would have been possible. And it's just been, honestly, all uphill every single year, year after year. And this will be my 14th year.
14.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I am allowed to ask this or if you're allowed to answer. What, on average, how many houses do you sell a year now?
I think last year myself, I think I did like 65 houses last year. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I am really, really, really busy. I mean, we're working on 12 listings that'll go live in the next 10 days, and we're really, really busy. And now I have a great team that helps me. So those numbers, that's not just, those are sales. There were my clients, but I did it with a lot of help.
Gotcha. Well, that's still a lot.
Have you ever baked cookies in a house?
Yeah. Oh, you do think you always want to make sure it smells good. And, one of the things we do, not for every open house, but a lot of our initial ones, we try to make them into events. And so we'll have it catered, and we'll have like Belle from this Jackson Symphony Orchestra come and play, or Mike Lee, who's this amazing one-man band, or and we have a couple different resources for those types of things to really set, like we have one coming up on Franklin, not far from here in the Queens neighborhood. And we want Belle there to play. If you've never heard Belle play the harp, she plays like modern music on the harp.
Okay.
Oh my God, she's like a fairy princess that is just
and a harp is just a beautiful instrument.
It is. But it sets that tone for that really cool architecture and the piece of history that Franklin Street brings with it. And so that's really what I love to do, is set that tone. So sometimes it is, this is grandma's house, we need to bake cookies and have milk and cookies available. Sometimes it's, we need to have a wine and cheese platter so that people can envision entertaining in this house. We do a lot, if it's at the lake, put the music out on the deck and have, shrimp cocktail and things that just kind of lend itself more to that lake vibe. But again, it's just about elevating that experience. And sometimes it's as simple as just, how do I want to say it? Greeting people with a big fat smile, and saying, hey, thanks so much for coming. Here's what I love most about this house. Now treat it like it's your own and go check it out.
You're hosting for the house, not for an event.
Exactly.
So it's like a vibe.
Yeah.
You have to provide the vibe.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. So one of my next questions were going to be, when would you say you became successful at it? But it sounds like pretty quick you became successful.
Well, so it's expensive, right? Because you are an independent contractor. You pay all your own taxes, your own insurance, you pay all your own marketing. You're 100% an independent contractor. So I think when I knew, like, holy shit, like, I'm going to be successful at this, it was probably years 3 and 4 going into that.
Awesome. So the reason I asked that is Would you change anything from that time up to years 3 and 4? And were there any good learning experiences that come right to mind?
Oh, you guys, I'll tell you the best thing about real estate is that I learned something on every single transaction. Not just about real estate, but about people. And so I feel like I'm in a constant state of education in this industry. And our industry is always changing to rules and regulations and lawsuits and all the things that come with it. But also just the tone, I mean, it's crazy what economics and politics and climate and all the things that affect people's decision making in ways that I never would have anticipated before I was in the industry. So yeah, I'm always learning. What was the first part of that question?
If there's anything you would change
What
from
I would
that
change?
time, yeah, I apologize.
What I would have done is I would have saved more money. I'm really, really good at making money, and I am freaking excellent at spending it. So I would have maybe worked harder to save a little bit more upfront because we are late bloomers. I'm worried about my future and my kids' future. So I wish I would have saved a little bit more early on, but it takes money to make money. And so the reason why I say I felt successful at years 3 and 4 is because I could start to strategically plan for the next year. Like, okay, here's the budget that I'm going to put forth for learning new things or adding in new technology or whatever the case might be. And so maybe I would have started implementing some of those things sooner.
So how do you feel about virtual tours?
I just did one earlier today. Now, and virtual tours can go both ways. You can have the virtual tour, which is the video that you kind of manipulate with your finger on Zillow. And that's good because COVID is really what made the virtual tour required. Because the idea is that, okay, if we're asking you to leave your house, which is an inherent risk, and you're entering somebody else's house, which is an inherent risk, let's make sure that you've already gotten over any major objections. Well, it didn't change anything. People still want to look at 10 houses. If they love the very first one, then they're skeptical of what they're missing out on. So, but it is important to me. It's more of a tool after the fact. Try
to be nice.
More of a tool for after the fact. Like, what did that bedroom look like again? And was there a spot in the ceiling in the laundry room? And so those virtual tours are great for being able to go back and do that. From a liability standpoint, it's a good thing too, right? Because if they're like, hey, we didn't know there was any water issues in the basement. It's like, well, we did disclose it, but also if you look at the pictures, you can see the water line, blah, blah, blah.
That's good.
Yeah, so I think that they can be a good thing. Now, the first time I ever saw what's called Matterport. Matterport was the first technology that would allow you to manipulate it. Like you can look up at the ceiling, you can climb up the stairs. And the very first one I ever saw was an agent out of Ann Arbor sent it to me and said, look at this house. You need to sell it to one of the incoming doctors at the hospital. And the very first thing I saw on this $1 million+ house in Ann Arbor was a pink towel wrapped up and set along in front of the sliding glass door that clearly had some type of a draft. And I thought, shame on that, because those were expensive. They're still expensive. Shame on that agent for not better preparing the product for the market and protecting the investment that they made. And that, first of all, if you are in a $1 million house and there's a drafty door, fix it. Fix it, Mr. Seller, before we list it. Do the right thing. If you want to get the most, do the most. So that would be number one. Number two, go there before the photographer, before the videographer, and make sure that everything just like, I don't want to see cords. I don't want to see tissue boxes. Why everybody has 17 tissue boxes in their house, I'm not really sure, but I don't want to see them. I don't want to see all your cords. I don't want to see your, what do you call it? Like your tricks. I don't want to see what the tricks are in the house. I want to be able to convey that this is a great product. And if it's not, let's get those things fixed so that it is a great product. And we don't have to worry about all these tricks.
It's funny you say that because even this not being, $1 million home or whatever, but kind of the same thing. What's his last name?
I
okay. Well, no, I apologize. But
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith,
John
but this dude is he had the whole house professionally cleaned. He took care of everything. I mean, it was, down to painting this with, I know that's it, but it's like he took his time and I mean, so and Brent was just great that, you know, he found the house, but the actual owner, I still have his number. He come out and he helps me with
It
the plumbing.
took us months to find out the like minute little stuff.
But
yeah,
I totally understand. It's like
Yeah.
this dude had everything.
Yeah.
It's like he wasn't trying to sell something with like what you said, like with the towel behind.
Get in front of those objections.
Yeah.
Eliminate them. Don't hide them. Don't mask them.
Yeah.
Eliminate them.
And it was great because I wasn't first time. I went conventional. So there's
Good
some
for
things
you.
like I knew I had to get a handrail up front, and I just wasn't worried because it's conventional. So
Yeah.
I wasn't worried.
Well,
Yeah.
when we seen it, we wanted it.
Yeah.
And it was like we couldn't with the first time. So
Yeah.
it was a bigger
So-
investment at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I'm proud of you guys.
Thank you.
That's huge.
Yep. So I want to just recap just a little bit. So, you know, your childhood sounded great. Married 25 years, 2 daughters, been a realtor for 14 years. Work at the brokerage house. That's kind of just a quick recap.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. So I just want to make sure that I summed up everything, not summed up everything, but
There's a summary.
okay. Oh geez. So you said blah 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 blah. I apologize. Do you specialize in any kind of properties, and how many days on average, how many days do they say on the market?
So in Jackson County, if you have something for sale under $250,000, as long as it's prepared well, it should be gone in 2 weeks.
Wow.
When you go to that next notch, which is 250 to 350, it might take a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And then from that, like 350 to the $1 million mark, you know, it becomes more of a niche product and it's going to take a little bit longer.
Mhm.
But it all depends on the time of the year.
Okay.
As Michiganders, we have a very strong response to winter,
Yeah.
right? And especially, and I actually love this winter because I love snow. If it's going to be winter, be winter.
Yeah.
But no matter what, it seems like February and March are always so gray, and everybody, you know, like you're in a financial hangover from the holidays, and then it's gray, and everybody's pissy, and then all of a sudden the tulips start to come up, and the crocus greens start to come up, and you see buds, and everybody just kind of is like, by God, if I have to live through one more Michigan winter, and then you fill in the blank, right? I'm going to move to town so I don't have to commute so far. I'm going to move to the country so I've got more room to lay out. I'm going to buy the lake house, and I'm going to downsize so I can travel more.
Mhm.
And if they don't act on that in April, May, and June, and we get to the end of June, beginning of July, we live in the most beautiful place in the world. And we forget, you know, like, oh yeah, I really like my neighbor and my garden is great. And you know what? I'm just going to paint the living room and give it a refresher. I'm just going to stay where I'm at. So we really capitalize on that period of time. So I spend most of the winter, my January and February are usually stinkers as far as producing dollars, but it's prep. So if you call me in November and you want to sell your house, I'll say, let's talk about timing. Okay. Good news is there's not a lot of competition on the market right now. But part of that is because there's not as many buyers in the market right now either. It's the holidays, it's expensive. But here's a list of 10 things that I really think you need to do in order to maximize the value of your home. And let's get it ready to list it in early April. I mean, and you will see, I'm sure if you were on Zillow, you're probably still somewhat addicted to it.
Oh, yeah.
So you'll see that we've had a huge uptick in listings in the last 30 days. And I'm telling you what, wait until you see what April's got coming. Rates have kind of stabilized. People have just swallowed that pill. My first mortgage was 9.5%. We were just thrilled not to be in double digits.
Yeah, my 7.2 or 7.3 something.
It's like 7.2, I think.
But in reality, though, that is you will never be able to borrow $150,000 for 7.2% in any other avenue.
No.
You know, not in a commercial loan, not a business loan, not a car loan, and so in reality, it's not that bad of a deal.
No.
And I always tell, especially first-time home buyers, if you make one extra payment a year just toward principal, so let's say your payment's $1,000 a month. If you can pay an extra $100 a month just toward principal, it takes 7 years off of a 30-year mortgage.
Wow.
So your 30-year mortgage just became a 23-year.
Awesome.
Now, what if you get a bonus and you can put another $1,000 down? And you can take that, 23-year mortgage and take it down to a 15-year. I mean, it's amazing what you can do. So I just think buying a home is investing in yourself.
Yep.
You are paying yourself every month for the roof over your head. You're not building wealth for somebody else.
Yeah.
There are only 4 times in the last 100 years where real estate tanked so bad that people could say it was a bad investment. Yes, and they were not necessarily the times that you think. 1982 was a lot worse than 08 through 11.
Wow.
A lot worse. Prices went down 50% in a matter of days. Inventory skyrocketed. People were building, had all these construction products coming up that just died.
Yeah.
And we overcame it, right? Yeah. And we became better and stronger for it. And there was a lot of opportunity in that time, just like there was in 08 through 11 when we were going through the mortgage crisis. But if you have been in your home 3 to 5 years, chances are you have started to build some really great equity, which is you building wealth for whatever it is you want to do next.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool when it's yours. I'm more inclined to want to do stuff to it and fix it up.
Yeah.
But it's just funny. You said April, and we have a bad habit of moving in winter. I do not know what it is.
It's cheaper, and
it's true.
We don't want to move as long.
But we don't do it.
It's like, get it out.
She makes it sound good. We do not do it on purpose. It has been all accidental.
Yeah.
But we closed on this December 8th.
Oh, wow.
We moved in the same day.
Yeah,
oh, my gosh.
Day, yeah.
So you were in for the holidays.
God, Brent and the other lady, and they closed this in a month.
Yeah, nice. Yeah,
nice. Mind you, I needed it, so
yeah,
they pushed. I'm sure.
Well, life happens 365 days a year, right? That's why I always tell people we buy and sell all year long. There's never a month that I'm not doing real estate.
Yeah.
There are just peak times, right? So to buy November, December, January, February is a great time to look. And you guys are smart, because if a home is for sale, then chances are the seller needs to move versus wants to move, right? It's a need. And so you can capitalize on that and get a little bit better of a value. So I know it's not always the most opportune time, but you were really smart.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. How, and I asked Zach this, and I'm just saying this because I'm curious always, but how do you determine listing prices? Well, yeah.
Well, it's a science. You know, you look at I never go to a listing appointment with a solid number in mind. I might have a range, but every house is different, and I need to know what I'm comparing. And you take the average cost per square foot sold. But what's more is learning from the sellers what is special about this home, what's gone wrong with the home, and what did you do to permanently remedy any of those shortcomings. What are the capital improvements that you put into the home, roof, windows, HVAC system, plumbing, electric, things like that. And then the aesthetic, there's a huge push again. I mean, I think that classic is always in style. Perfectly flawed hardwood floors. I mean, every time I walk into a house and they're like, "Oh, we're going to redo the floors," I'm like, "No, don't." Unless they're really jacked. Yeah. Let the personality of the history of the house come out and really be told. And so, yeah, I just think that there's, I just kind of lost.
Are you talking about the millennial gray washing of homes?
Yeah, and what's funny is that clean will always sell.
Yeah.
Right. So the millennial gray wash is a very clean, almost, sterile, but clean, right? Yeah. And so we are starting to see trends where warmer tones are being brought in. And I like to see that the younger generation is really kind of finding great value in repurposing homes, spaces. And, we have a lot of Claire Allen construction. We also have Albert Kahn construction here in Jackson. Those are some pretty big names for a pretty small city. And what has happened with the resurgence of those homes and buildings being made into very sought after housing today is a testament to that younger generation. So
awesome. You are, this has been great. I just say that we are getting close to the end. So I got my questions. I got a couple more, but I just try to give like a 10-minute, heads up.
I also have my end question.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, I still got a couple more for you. I did just a couple other curious things because you're still a real estate agent, but how do you handle negotiations, and how do you handle multiple offers?
Negotiation is, you have to really find out what's important to the seller, right? Okay, so if I represent the buyer, I know what the buyer's wants and needs are, what's important to the seller, and what can we do to put together the most attractive, seamless, honest offer that we can. And to me, that honest part is a huge part of a good, strong, good result negotiation. Is just finding out up front, what do you want? What can we give? And can we make some magic happen?
Yeah. Awesome. And then how do you handle multiple offers? I apologize.
Yeah. So if I'm the listing agent, you just sit down and you compare apples to apples. And again, what was important to my seller? Sellers live there for 50 years and they want time after closing to move out. Okay, well, this one's offering us 60 days, possession with no rent due.
Yeah.
That's a huge value. Maybe this offers $5,000 less than the next one, but it's, all about overall terms. And so then knowing what's the most important to your seller, you put together a list to just kind of streamline the process for them and let them make the ultimate decision on what works best for them.
Awesome.
I'm having camera difficulties. We can still hear you though.
Okay, well, I apologize about that, but so we will come towards the end now.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there. I apologize.
No worries.
Sorry to whoever, to who's listening. So just the wrap up questions is well, before I go there, I don't care if the camera so they can still hear us and it's still broadcasting.
Yep.
How is JTV? How is doing what you do for them? Just curious.
Oh my gosh, do you know how lucky we are as a community to have that resource? I mean, it's very early on in my career, they became a very intricate partner in me elevating the marketing for my listings. But what was more is the Hawley family became dear friends of mine. And so when COVID hit and everything shuttered, within 24 or 48 hours, JTV came together and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put together a morning show. It's going to air 5 days a week. We're going to have local doctors and disease experts. We're going to have local numbers, because when you looked at it from a state or national or worldwide global level, it was so overwhelming. It was doomsday, right? But when you looked at local numbers and research that was being done, things that were working, resources that we had available to us, it was huge. And then on the flip side is they really dove into how can we help local businesses stay afloat. So they were letting you know, here's where you can do, drive-through pickup. Here's where, you can, they're closed, but here's how you can get your Thanksgiving meal, or all these different incredible resources that I was so grateful for, and got to be a small part of that until it turned into a regular gig where I get to host on Monday mornings. And all I get to do is highlight all the amazing things happening in Jackson, Michigan, and the surrounding area. And you mentioned it right up front. My husband knew nothing about Jackson except that there was a prison here. Yeah. I grew up here and I never realized there was a prison here until I was old enough to realize how people made their living. You're like, oh, your dad works at the prison, or, it was never of any consequence to us, and they have to be somewhere. And in reality, having the prison north of Jackson is a great tax base for us with fantastic jobs. They're not even jobs, they're careers. So just trying to take something that some people might perceive as a negative and just really showing it for the positive and the reality that it is. JTV has done an unbelievable job of that. But you think about it, I mean, can you imagine playing high school sports and having it be on television?
Yeah, that's cool.
That's so really cool. Yeah. Or having a small business and being able to go on television that, maybe only a handful of people are watching it on channel 90 on Comcast, but they're streaming it all over the country and watching it on YouTube and Facebook. I have people call me all the time, like, hey, I'm in Colorado, but my mom's still there, and I was wondering if you could help her. That's the power of JTV, which is the vision that the Hawley family, they sold everything. They bought that building. They moved in upstairs. Wow. Like they were all in and had this vision and brought it to life, and has become this huge legacy and resource for the community. So I can't say enough about it. And if you are a local business or a young entrepreneur, tap into that resource. They're great at saying, okay, here's your business and here's where we think would be some smart ad placement for you. Cool. You're just starting out. Here's some affordable options for you to get started. Awesome. I can't say enough about it.
I'm going to. I've reached out to him because I also want to, try and get my name out there. Yeah. I was curious about the same thing.
Yes.
So awesome. Thank you for saying that. So my wrap-up questions are pretty basic. What is your definition of success?
Peace. Yeah, like just peace, being able to not fret and worry. I've spent a lot of time writhing my hands, and the less I do that, the more successful I feel.
Well, that answered your last question too. That's perfect, because she always asks, what's one word to describe your journey?
Like the whole thing from start to finish, where you started to where you are now, and even where you're going to be? What's one word to describe the whole thing?
Yeah, I should have been doing this.
Unfinished.
Unfinished.
I like that.
Unfinished.
I like that.
Yeah. Just unfinished. I've never gotten to a point where I'm like, okay, I've arrived in whatever it is. I'm not done. I want to be a better wife. I want to be a better mother. I want to be a better business owner, community member, and daughter, and all those things.
Cool. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I don't know if you go through them, but at the end of every episode, I give out a gift card from a local business or people that are out of town. I give, like mobile gas.
Yeah.
Try and keep just So I didn't know what you use at the brokerage house, but I got you a $40 gift certificate for the water store.
Oh, perfect.
So the water store is family owned and operated since 1954. Whether it's and this is them, what they wrote on their website, whether it's our stores with many products to choose from, our convenient filling stations for purified drinking water, or delivery of water and coffee supplies, you can depend on us for all of your home and office needs.
Perfect. Coffee supply.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then I actually forgot at the beginning because we were talking, and this is I feel a fool, so I'm going to do that next episode. I told Mark I was going to give a whole spiel, and thank you for coming on, Jenifer.
Thank you so much. So nice to see you guys.
Yep,
It was great.
Thank you, Katie.
Really quick.
Are
we? So I kind of fixed it. The video just went out.
That's fine. We can kill it. That ended great.
Sorry for the technical difficulties today, guys, but we will be back tomorrow.
Yep. But heck, it only cut out. It just must not have been charged enough.
Yep.
No worries.
That's all right. It was just